Well, it's time for our annual Christmas episode, and I have to tell you, Russ, I don't really feel up for this.
Not in the holiday spirit yet?
No, not yet. I don't know what to do about this, and I've heard all this Christmas music all this week. I don't know. It was good music, which I'm going to talk about soon, but I don't know. I guess it's been a busy week. I'm just kind of not in that Christmas spirit, but I have an idea. I've dug out my Santa hat, and I'm going to put that on, and maybe that'll help me out. What do you think? Let me just see here.
All right, let's see.
Oh yeah, that does feel a little better. There's kind of like an odd Christmas energy in this.
You're starting to look a little more jolly.
Yeah. I got this Santa hat from one of those girls like handing out pamphlets like, for her company outside. So I guess it's got that good energy in it. So maybe this will pick me up and I can really talk positively about these albums because they deserve that. We have a kind of an interesting Christmas this year. It's a little different than the past, a little offbeat, shall we say.
Well, this Christmas program we've got is going to be a little bit off the beaten path and take us to some warmer climes and some interesting places musically, as well as in a space in our imagination.
You could think of this episode as the Christmas road not taken, and we took it.
And you're listening to Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind, normally bringing you 3 classical and 3 jazz recordings every week. What we think are the best and most interesting new releases. Tonight, though, it's all holiday music, and We've got some interesting recordings, as I said.
And we should say it's all specifically Christmas music. Holiday music basically is Christmas music.
That's right. Anyway, this is episode 192, getting close to that 200 mark. And before we get into the program, I want to send out a thanks to Gábor Horváth, Hungarian pianist, for sharing our episode from last week. We featured his new trio recording Multiverse on Honey Records, and that gave us some new listeners in Hungary, which is the number 3 country in downloads so far this month. So be sure to check out that recording and the others from last week as well. We even got a like from George Cables, and you want to check out his recording as well. That's called I Hear Echoes.
Do you think it was actually him that liked us? Because he's 80 years old. Is he online?
Who knows?
Maybe it was his assistant.
Could be. Anyway, check that out if you want to hear a living jazz master. In the episode description, you'll find links to Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music for all of this Christmas music we're going to discuss. And at the top of the description, there's a link to the full episode playlist. That's all the music in one place on Deezer, CD quality streaming music from France. You can listen to the podcast on Deezer as well if you want to get everything in one place. But if you can't see the full description or recording list and links on whatever app or platform you listen to us on, come over to our host site, Podbean, podbean.com. Everything is easy to follow there for this and all previous episodes. If you enjoy the podcast, follow us or subscribe wherever you listen to us. Tell a music-loving friend. And if you take a moment to give us a ranking or write a short review, that helps us get listed in the musical category recommendations. That's another way we can grow our audience. Come over and follow us on our Facebook page as well to get extra info and some more new releases throughout the week. You can leave a message or comment there as well. Follow us on X too. I put up the new episodes and new releases on there for the past couple of weeks. Our ID there is Adult Music Pod. And if you'd like to contact us directly with any comments or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is adultmusicpodcast, all one word, @gmail.com. We're going to play samples of this holiday music tonight. And this is our fair use disclaimer. Music sample clips are for commentary and educational purposes. We recommend that listeners listen to the complete recordings, all of which are available on streaming services in the links provided. We also suggest that if you enjoy the music, you consider purchasing the CDs or high-quality downloads to support the artists. And we're ready for some classical Christmas. Mike, where are we going to start out in this episode?
Okay, the first album we're going to do is suitably titled The Christmas Album.
There you go.
Before we go on, let me just say, it's really interesting to see the names of Christmas albums every year because it feels like with the subject of Christmas songs, people are trying to come up with some new way to organize the same words to give their album a title, and I think we've run out of them. Anyway, this is by Benjamin Appl. He's a German-British baritone born in Regensburg, Bavaria. He became a British citizen in 2019, I believe. This album also features the Regensburger Domspatzen, which is a choir in Regensburg that Benjamin Appl and his brothers all sang in when they were children. And this is Christian Heiss is the chorus master. So he's gone back to his hometown to make this record. It's kind of heartwarming
Nice, yeah.
in a way. And that'll set the tone for the album, too. This also features the Münchner Rundfunkorchester. I love those long German words, Conducted by Florian Helgath. He also plays the Styrian accordion on one track. We will sample that when we come to it. And we have a few other soloists, too, who I will mention when they come up. Okay, so Benjamin Appl, he's known as a singer of German Lieder. That's really his big thing. He's really, I guess you could say he's an opera singer, but he's most known for German art songs. In the notes, he says his wish is that by listening to this album, we will find some calm in an increasingly stressful world. And in fact, this is a pretty calm album.
I'd say so, yeah.
Yeah, it's really beautifully done. Let's just get right into it. Track 1, John Francis Wade, arranged by David Wilcox, Adeste Fideles. Oh, what a great tune to start off the holiday season. This features Benjamin Appl, the Regensburger Domspatzen, and the Münchner Rundfunkorchester. So the orchestra provides a warm, welcoming sound on this and really all the tracks they play on. Appl's entry is strong. He's way above the chorus in the mix, though they are perfectly audible too. It's a smooth, rich baritone voice. It's actually kind of getting into the tenor. I don't know about the tenor range, but it's kind of a light baritone, I think. Really more of an art song baritone. Strong in attack, and here he's mostly in his, I guess, mid-range. Could be his higher range, though, if he's a baritone. He sings the first verse in Latin and the second in English. His English pronunciation is clear. It's very formal sounding. The choir then come in for the third verse in German, so we get a little bit of everything in this track. Let's just hear the beginning. I can't really sample all the elements, but we'll hear more as the album goes on. We got the whole first verse in there. Yeah. Appl then sings the verse in German, accompanied by the choir. So this is a very satisfying opening. Track 2, Felix Mendelssohn. Ja, es sollen wohl Berge weichen, meaning for the mountains shall depart. This is sung by Elias, and it's from the oratorio Elijah. Here we have Appl with the Regensburger Domspatzen only. We're in Appl's area of expertise in this emotive aria from Mendelssohn's oratorio Elijah. Appl applies a more tender voice to this piece. It's appealing and really over before you know it. So let's go on to track 3. Andreas Hammerschmidt, who lived in the 1600s, Machet die Tore weit. And this features only the choir, so Appl is not on this track, which features boys and men. They're split in this setting, which implores the people to open wide the gates for the King of Glory. It's an excellent showcase for the choir, and let's give them a little love and sample the opening of this track. The Regensburger Domspatzen. Track 4, Max Reger, Maria Wiegenlied. This is a chance to hear this work in its vocal version. We'll be hearing an instrumental on the next album. In fact, a lot of these tracks, being that they're Christmas songs, they're going to repeat from some albums. Let's sample Appl's gentle vocal here again in his area of expertise, German Lieder. Very pretty and beautiful lyrical singing there by Benjamin Appl. Track 5, Michael Head, who lived 1900 to 1976. This is a song called The Three Mummers. Michael Head was an English composer, and Appl here sings in English. Again, you can tell he's not native to the language, but he's so polished in tone and careful with pronunciation that you find yourself listening with deep appreciation. The orchestra here accompanies gently, producing a rich and nicely balanced sound, with the bass popping out of the texture at the bottom, adding texture. This album is full of gentle tones, and this is a great track to demonstrate that. Let's move on to track 6, Michael Pretorius, Est ist ein Ros entsprungen, which is Lo, how a rose ere blooming in English. It's a famous German carol from the Renaissance. The choir opens the tune with Pretorius's chorale-like setting. I'm going to go in a little bit more so we can hear Benjamin Appl singing as well. So this is around the 55-second mark. Yeah, really beautiful. Track 7, Johann Sebastian Bach. We get a few arias from the Christmas Oratorio. This one is Großer Herr, o starker König. The orchestra here presents a spare version of this aria from Bach's Christmas Oratorio. The brass especially sound naked in the dry sound of the recording. The tone doesn't resound as I feel it should, and I've heard this so many times that I'm just comparing it to other recordings. But it's perfectly fine here. I don't want to complain about it. It's just sort of a small scale. Appl's vocal is very close and very dryly recorded with no room sound on it at all, so we can hear its quality very well. Appl sings beautifully, and you can hear every detail in his performance. At the end, he makes a big deal of the cht sound in the word Pracht. Listen for that. Did I make a big deal of that just now? Okay. Well, it's nothing compared to what he does. Anyway. Track 8, Johann Sebastian Bach, Ich stehe an deiner Krippen hier. Now this is from the Christmas Oratorio, but it's not an aria, it's a chorale, and it's usually sung only by the choir, but here Appl is singing it solo, with the orchestra filling in harmony where the harmonized voices normally are. It's an interesting decision to sing this solo, and it sounds great with Appl's tone applied to it. Chorales have very simple melodies, and this is really very direct and appealing. Track 9, Max Reger again. Schlaf mein Kinderlein, Sleep My Child. This track features only the choir. The arrangement begins with the boys' voices, then the men's voices have the second verse, at the end of which the entire choir combines. The appeal is in the clear setting and singing, and the changes of registers Rega uses through the various verses. It's a pretty straightforward setting of the text. Track 10, Christoph Israel. Born in 1964, so he's a contemporary composer. O du fröhlich, O you joyful one. This is for the orchestra only. Israel is a German composer. This is an orchestral piece. It has a joyful opening and an appealing theme, and it's also very short. Let's be uplifted by this opening. Very simple, very straightforward, very appealing. Track 11, Hermann de Lacher, 1918 to 2004. He was a 20th century composer. This is called Gehe Hansel, Pack de Bingersam. Now this one features Florian Helgath, the conductor of the orchestra, on the Styrian accordion, as I mentioned earlier. The accordion is an appealing addition to the sound of the album. Appl sings this popular song from the 20th century with his characteristic understatedness. When I say popular, I mean in the popular style. I don't mean like everybody knows it. Though he does put the fun across, too. It's a fun piece. Let's hear it.
Hansel, bock dei Winkel zusammen, wir gehen nach Bethlehem. Des Warten wird uns jetzt schon zu lang, der hier sich auch schon kennt. Hast du denn nicht den Engel gehört, wie uns hat verkündet? Der Gottessohn als kleiner Bub, heil Nacht vom Himmel kind. Die Hansel, bock dei Winkel zusammen.
Well, the words say Christmas, but the music says Oktoberfest.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I don't know what to think about this. It's a fun track, though. Track 12, John Rutter, very famous British composer. Christmas Lullaby. This is in English. Smooth strings accompany Appl in his lower range. Let's hear a bit of this.
Shines in Bethlehem, angels are singing, the sound fills the air. Wise men have journeyed to greet the Messiah, but only a mother and baby lie there.
Yeah, John Rutter's settings are just always so beautiful. He's a great choral composer. The choir is excellent, and I probably should have sampled a little more of them. We're so used to Rutter's works being sung by English choirs that it's refreshing to hear this noticeably different sound, though English choirs have a signature sound that we associate with these works, so I think it was sort of nice to hear this in a different way. It's a gorgeous melody and a heartwarming work. Track 13, Cécile Chaminade, Le Noël des Oiseaux. I'm finding the programming of this recital to be really thoughtful. We now go into a French language work with a composer whose star is rising again. Appl switches well between languages. Chaminade has appealingly gentle brass elements in the score, and I'm going to try to pick some of that up in this sample, which I'm going to start from about a minute and 20 seconds in.
Cloches sonores d'oubli qui pour la messe de minuit au fond de l'air teintés agiles sonnez
A very appealing song, and one that should be better known. Track 14. Very impressive here. Gustav Nordqvist. I don't even know how to say this. It's Swedish. Jul, Jul, Strälanda, Jul. So here we have Benjamin Appl singing in Swedish, which we should find impressive on adult music since we, on this podcast, can't even pronounce people's names correctly. Interestingly, the booklet eliminates the German translation to fit this in, which is funny considering that Appl would have a large German audience for this album, right. You would think. The work requires a more declamatory vocal, and Appl delivers that along with the smoothness of tone that makes him so appealing. Amazing how our Swedish composer gets the snow into the music. I just feel like it's a quiet, snowy night when I listen to that. The text, by the way, pictures Christmas as some kind of bird gently descending on us. Track 15, John Rutter again, Joseph's Carol. John Rutter, one of the great choral composers of our time, and he's written numerous Christmas works into the bargain. Here, Appl starts his vocal with a firm tone in his lower range, and the choir comes in after Appl moves up into his high range to end his verse. Track 16, Josef Schnabel, Transeamus usque Bethlehem. This is in Latin and has a formal dance quality to its rhythm. When I say that, I mean sort of like a Baroque dance, something you would expect at court. Appl sings the entire text, and then the choir comes in. There's some melisma on the Gloria in Excelsis Deo, and this is a very attractive sounding choir. Track 17, a traditional song, Es wird scho gleich dumpa. This features Hans Berger on the zither and Johannes Berger on double bass. The sound of the zither comes as a bit of a surprise. Its tone outlines the song's folk quality.
Es wird scho gleich dumpa, es wird scho gleich Nacht, drum komm ich zu dir her, mein Heiland auf der Wacht. Wir singen Lieder, dem Liebling, dem Klang, du magst ja nicht schlafen, ich hear dich nur wollen.
You could almost imagine Appl standing under some woman's window and wooing her by serenading her on this. It sort of sounds like that. Appl's voice comes across with a bit of a hush to it, not wanting the sleeping child of the text to awaken. I made that serenade reference. It kind of also sounds like he doesn't want the neighbors to wake up while his honey is listening to him sing under the window. Anyway, let's move on. Track 18, Engelbert Humperdinck, a name famous for English-speaking people, for the pop singer from the 1960s. But this is, again, I've said this before, he's not the guy that sang you to sleep after the lovin'. That's a different guy. This is the German composer, the composer of the opera Hansel und Gretel. This particular aria is from that opera. It's called Abendsegen, and this one features a boy treble, Elias Grau, as well. The song's prayer-like quality is enhanced in its chorale-like approach to phrasing. The boy treble sings a counter melody against Appl's vocal, or actually, I think it's Appl who has the counter melody here. Anyway, let's hear this. Actually in the sample here, they're actually singing together in unison harmony, and then they go off for the ending of that part. Track 19, Peter Cornelius, 1824 to 1874, Die Könige, the Kings. Here again, the choir sings a counter melody and indeed a completely different text to Appl's lead. The choir's text admires the morning star as Appl's text follows it to Jesus' manger. Track 20, Samuel Scheidt. There are a lot of tracks on this album. O Jesulein Zart, arranged by Chris Hazel. This has a lovely introduction as Appl sings the opening line solo and the Regensburger Domspatzen quietly build up its presence. They barely register above a glimmer in the first verse, but take over for the second verse. The composition is austere and moving.
O Jesulein zart, dein Kripplein ist hart. O Jesulein zart, wie liegst du so hart? Ach, schlaf, ach du, die Äuglein zu, schlaf und gib uns die ew'ge Ruh. O Jesulein zart, wie liegst du.
Track 21, Carl Thiel, In Dulci Jubilo. This is the choir only. The spotlight is on them. This familiar tune is given a cascading arrangement here. Really pretty resolve there. And beautiful recording, too. We can hear all the elements of the lines going against each other. Really fantastic. Track 22, Hugh Martin. Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. Arranged by John Rutter, and the text is by Ralph Blaine. Well, from out of nowhere, we get a secular, popular song.
Yeah.
Really a song that's taken up by a lot of jazz musicians. I think this works better as a jazz tune, to be perfectly honest, but John Rutter has a way with orchestration that makes the work glow, and Appl delivers a performance filled with sincerity. His preciseness of pitch is especially noticeable to me here, since I know this song so well. I think we're going to hear this again later in other recordings, so I'm going to let you hear this on your own. Track 23, Hans Berger, Say It, Den Stern. Hans Berger is a German composer, born in 1944. He's contemporary. The work starts with a trombone theme, and then the choir comes in full-voiced, accompanied by imposing brass and shimmering strings. Appl comes in for the second verse. And finally, where would we be without track 24, Franz Xaver Gruber, Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht, which we know as Silent Night. This features Edeltraud Appl on the guitar. This is Benjamin Appl's mother.
Wow.
How nice. Now, we in the U.S. rarely get to hear this song sung in its original German text. Unless you're a classical music listener, then you hear it often. What more ideal voice can we have here than Appl's? A song that's in the family here, so with his mother accompanying on guitar. Let's hear this. It's really sweet. We get to hear the original text as well.
Traute, hochheilige
we do hear the choir come in one more time, too. And it's kind of moving when you think that's his mother on the guitar and his old boyhood choir accompanying him. It's an ideal way to end the album, really. The entire album is very polite and understated, sort of like a glowing ember on a Yule log that warms the house without making you sweat. It has the sense of the quiet of a small town after a snowfall. It's a recital that will give you that feeling of Christmas warmth and gratitude for another year past. Appl sings with a formal kind of restraint. Everything seems ordered and in place, and this is true of the Regensburger Domspatzen, the choir, as well. One can imagine they were a big influence on Appl's vocal style. The program attracted me. It features songs in different European languages, giving one the feeling of being united across continents and oceans. The record is calming, as is Appl's soothing tone, a real gift given the state of the world right now. So I think that Benjamin Appl's wish that we will find some calm in an increasingly stressful world by listening to this album is realized. It might be the ideal Christmas release for 2024.
For a classical recording, there's really something for everyone here. A nice mix of choral, orchestral, and more sparse settings for Appl's rich baritone voice. There are well-known and more obscure religious, folk, and secular pieces that make the mix, as well as pleasing arrangements with standout instrumental lines on the oboe, brass, and even accordion, as we heard. And Appl conveys a warmth of holiday spirit in both somber and more relaxed settings. What's not to like?
I thought so too. That's probably the most straightforward album we're going to hear tonight, though, because next we have an album called Joyfully, with an exclamation point at the end. So I guess I should say it, Joyfully. Did that come across?
Your holiday cheer's coming on stronger and stronger.
It's coming on. It's the hat, I'm telling you. Joyfully, music for the most wonderful time of the year. And this is by duo Giovivo, which is an Italian name, but this is a Swiss duo. This features Fabian Bloch, and he's mostly on the euphonium, and Muriel Zeiter on the piano, but they will switch instruments on certain tracks, and I will indicate that when it happens. This is on the Genuin label, released on November 29th. You'd never know this was a Christmas album simply by looking at the cover, which is a pretty standard photo of the musicians. The track list gives it away. Even the title doesn't really tell you what this is going to be about.
They need hats like you have.
Yeah, maybe. That would have done it. Basically, this is an album for euphonium and piano. There are some instrumental switches. I'll indicate them when they come up. Now, the first track, you would never know this is a Christmas record by this either. Karel Svoboda, who lived 1938 to 2007, so 20th century composer. Drei Nüsse für Aschenbrödel from 1973. Very famous song, as it turns out, but not for us in the United States. This was transcribed by Muriel Zeiter in 1984 and Fabian Bloch, who set his hand to it in 1986, and features Fabian Bloch on the euphonium and Muriel Zeiter on the piano. So what is this? It's a Christmas film classic from what were then Czechoslovakia and East Germany. This starts with a lovely quick repeating set of arpeggio figures on the piano. The euphonium comes in gently and plays this beguiling and new to me melody. The piece is in a gently flowing 6/8. This could easily catch on in the US if it were better known there, or maybe if there were lyrics in English. Anyway, let's hear a sample of it. It's really beautiful. It's really striking. Okay, I can't wait for that cadence to show up. It's a very long phrase. Why aren't people showing up at my door singing this song? Work on it, you choirs. Okay. I should mention Zeita's piano playing on this track is light, brisk, and warm. It's a very appealing performance. Track 2, Richard Eilenberg, Petersburger Schlittenfahrt, Opus 57. It means St. Petersburg Sleigh Ride, and it's transcribed by Muriel Zeiter. Fabian Blach on euphonium, Muriel Zeiter piano. That will always be the case unless I say differently. So this German composer was asked to write a march for the enthronement of Russian Tsar Alexander III. He originally wrote this for orchestra. This has a quick rhythm, which the cumbersome euphonium plays over nimbly. Actually, maybe it's not that cumbersome, given the previous track. Bloch plays amazingly quick trills on the instrument too. Let's hear a little sample of this. Okay, now we hear the Christmas spirit coming into this podcast. There was excellent quick light playing on this track by Zeiter, too. Track 3, Lowell Mason. He lived 1792 to 1872. Joy to the World from 1839, arranged by Daniel Hall in 1996. The text was written by the American clergyman Isaac Watts in 1719. Mason drew heavily from Handel to write this music. British composer Daniel Hall was inspired by gospel and boogie-woogie sounds for his arrangement, heard here. The piece has a light swing to it, which breaks out of its usual stiff but very appealing rhythm. This is a different take on this tune. We'll have to sample it. Yeah, how about that? This Christmas is getting maybe a little too merry over here.
Jazzy anyway.
Yeah, there's some impressive jazzy piano playing by Zeiter here, who gets a bit of a solo there. You heard the beginning of it. Bloch makes me think of one of those big guys who are light on their feet on the dance floor with his big toned instrument gliding lightly over the theme. It's amazing performances. There's a nice sort of euphonium sigh or gasp at the end of the track. Track 4, Adolphe Adam, Cantique de Noël, arranged by Muriel Zeiter. The poem is by Placide Cappeau, but we don't hear it here, of course. The piano starts this in a straightforward manner and plays a familiar accompaniment as Bloch comes in with the famous melody. This is played straight. Track 5, Traditional God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, composed around 1760 and arranged by Daniel Hall. Hall weaves some jazz elements into the next 3 arrangements heard on the album. The opening piano line here sets an immediate syncopated line. Bloch on the euphonium slightly alters his rhythm to a dotted rhythm, not quite jazzy, and this is a fun version of the piece and falls comfortably on the ear. Track 6, Melchior Frank, O Tannenbaum, arranged by Daniel Hall. This also has a jazzy feel. Let's sample this one. and then Zaita gets a chance on the piano. This is a very different version than the Vince Guaraldi one that most people tend to emulate. There's a cute piano flourish at the end of this track, too. Track 7, traditional, Deck the Halls, arranged by Daniel Hall. And of course, it's going to have a bit of a jazzy feel to it. It's got an interesting piano opening with rapid repeated notes. Over the busy piano, Bloch plays the melody tranquilly, though the fa-la-la part has some spring to it. He picks up on the rapid repeated notes and shows some awesome technique in playing them for an improvisatory sounding section. Track 8, Max Reger, here we go, from Schlichte Weisen, Simple Songs, Opus 76 from 1912, number 52, Maria Wiegenlied. We heard this on the Benjamin Appl album above. This is transcribed by Fabian Bloch, and it's a familiar Christmas tune played in a straightforward manner. Although we have the euphonium in the lead here, Fabian Bloch manages a smooth legato melody and appealing tone. This gives me the Christmas fuzzies with its slowly taken 6/8. Track 9, Thomas Helmore. He lived in the 19th century. Good King Wenceslas from 1853, arranged by Muriel Zaita and Fabian Bloch. It starts with some light percussive sounds produced somehow by Bloch on the euphonium. The piano has the lead at the opening. The piece is oddly phrased, with the euphonium playing the opening and the piano answering only with the chords of the second half of the phrase. The euphonium eventually takes over the entire melody with full forte tone. By the end, the interpretation is pretty straightforward. Track 10, Johann Abraham Peter Schultz, Ihr Kinderlein kommet, or O Come Little Children, from 1794, arranged by Muriel Zaita and Fabian Bloch. And now we have Fabian Bloch on the bass trumpet instead of the euphonium. We get our first change of instrumentation. Giovivo's arrangement here has a jazzy boogie style suiting the bass trumpet very well. We're going to have to hear this. Here we go. Yeah, from the opening of that melody there, I thought we were going to hear a tisket, a tasket for a moment. The swing rhythm gives every Christmas song a light feel, and that's why I like hearing it applied to these songs. Again, Muriel Zaita has a feel for the boogie rhythm that's comfortable to the ear. Track 11, James Lord Pierpont, Jingle Bells. Oh, I always dread seeing that title on a Christmas album. But here, Giovivo have made a swing arrangement of the work. Again, Fabian Bloch is on bass trumpet, and we have not only a jazzy treatment, but a boogie-woogie treatment here. The result is far more bearable, in fact, very enjoyable. Bloch is still on the bass trumpet, and Zaita has the solid boogie-woogie feel that's more friendly than aggressive. I like the odd chord that the track ends on, too. Track 12, Johannes Brahms. Lullaby for... how would you say this? Heil, I guess. After Brahms' Intermezzo, 1892, and Wiegenlied, 1868, that's the famous lullaby, arranged by Muriel Zaita and Fabian Bloch. And here, Fabian Bloch is on the Wunderhorn. The Intermezzo for piano, you may know this work if you know Brahms' late piano works, it's very gentle, is the introduction to the Wiegenlied here, or lullaby. They fit pretty well together. This is a pretty interesting combination of the intermezzo for solo piano and the lullaby. It's straightforward if we ignore the fact that the two pieces are butted together here. The transition happens at 1 minute and 10 seconds, so I'm going to start the sample earlier so you can hear both interpretations. And keep in mind you are now hearing Fabian Bloch play the Wunderhorn. one of Western music's most immortal melodies.
Yeah.
The duo rather dress up the piano accompaniment for the last minute and a half and add some ornamental passages to the horn part. Track 13, Antonio Vivaldi, from Die Vier Jahreszeiten, or the Four Seasons, Opus 8, from 1725. This is from the Winter Concerto, arranged by Giovivo, and we're back to Fabian Blach on the euphonium here. In the middle of the piece, we hear a Cuban Latin montuno, which is sort of like a son, which is a song-based composition. Muriel Zeiter put it there to prevent the atmosphere from becoming too icy, she says, while Fabian Blach improvises to the melody of the popular Spanish Christmas carol Feliz Navidad. This is a crazy arrangement. This goes even farther than the previous track in reinterpretation. The opening winter theme from the Vivaldi concerto loses a bit of frostiness in this interpretation, which is all well and fine. The piano part is inviting, whereas the orchestra version it's chilling. It sounds like the euphonium is actually playing an approximation of Vivaldi's violin solos from the concerto, and it's pretty amazing because those are highly virtuosic solos. But this piece suddenly goes into Feliz Navidad, and I have to try to get that into a sample along with the Vivaldi. So let's try from this section. This is from about the 1 minute and 50-second mark. All right, I've got to get out of this. Too much fun. At the 4-minute mark, the piece goes into the lovely second movement of the Vivaldi concerto, which paints a picture of a man relaxing by a window as snow falls outside. We don't get the third movement, though. This is a really fun listen. Track 14, Daniel Hall. He's the arranger on a lot of the jazzy tracks on this album. This is his piece. He was born in 1996, a contemporary composer. It's called Apricity from 2023. It's a ballad. The opening descending lines symbolize falling snow. At the musical climax, Hall envisions a warmth-giving winter sun. It starts with a unison falling theme between the two instruments, then the piano accompanies a rather sparsely phrased euphonium line, and I want to pick up that theme, so we'll start this about 30 seconds in. The theme gets a bit busier for the middle section and is full of optimism by the end. The piece fits well with the program. Track 15, traditional tune, Amazing Grace, from 1831, arranged by Muriel Zeiter. On this track, Fabian Blach is playing the Alphorn. The Alphorn adds a lot of depth of tone to this very famous and already powerful melody.
quite a range on that instrument.
Yeah, and Muriel Zeiter, of course, we heard a churchy accompaniment. There's a delayed tonic on the last note that's really appealing, too. After the first statement, the piano plays solo and gives the work a bit of a gospel blues feel. Track 16, traditional Adeste Fideles. We heard this on the Benjamin Appl album, too. Here, Fabian Bloch is playing the piano, and Muriel Zeiter is on the transverse flute, so a bit of role switching there. Zeiter gets a chirpy sound from the flute, especially when she solos just before the first minute is over. I'm lining up the sample to catch a bit of both the melody and the solo. Let's listen. All right, track 17, Franz Schubert's Ave Maria. Oh, another Christmas staple, very famous song, played at weddings too. This is arranged by August Wilhelm and transcribed by Fabian Bloch. We're back to our usual instruments here, euphonium and piano. This is played in a straightforward manner, with Zeiter really underlying the rhythm in a clock-ticking way. The euphonium plays a smooth legato above that, so the two lines are in contrast. It's an appealing performance. And track 18, again, we end with Franz Xaver Gruber's Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht, except there's no singing this time. Now, in this case, we have Fabian Bloch on the euphonium and Muriel Zeiter on the violin. There's no piano here. This has a sort of habanera rhythm provided by the euphonium at the beginning. There's not much stillness to this Stille Nacht, or silence either, though it is gently played. It's hard to know where to sample as the interpretation changes when the euphonium takes over in the first minute. We really don't hear the famous theme until the second minute, so let's sample there. The euphonium takes us to a lightly percussive ending. And that's the end of the album. The booklet notes say that if Muriel Zeiter and Fabian Bloch had lived 300 years ago, they would certainly have been musicians in a commedia dell'arte troupe, traveling around entertaining people. In fact, you'd think these are two American musicians, given the musical styles and the cheekiness with which they're playing, but both of them are Swiss. If Christmas is a time of smiles, this album certainly provides plenty of opportunities for that. The arrangements are mostly fun and often clever. The seriousness and straightness that we usually get from classical performances is loosened up a lot here, and that's a part of what makes this album so much fun. A program of traditional works played during the Christmas season, presented with very untraditional arrangements. It's an enjoyable, relaxing, and smile-inducing listen. I actually found it stress-relieving, too. It's really almost like the opposite of the Benjamin Appl record that we heard first.
It's a fun mix of a program. Christmastime is brass time, as far as I'm concerned, so the rich euphonium tone is welcome. Not only that, but we get bass trumpet and the Alp horn with its arresting sound. Fabian Bloch's technique blows you away on the Vivaldi piece, and it was fun hearing that on euphonium. Muriel Zeider's switch-ups to flute and violin keep a playful mood, and I found Daniel Hall's arrangements are really jazzy with fun Latin touches included. Yeah, this is a really fun collection of Christmas music.
Okay, and finally, what's Christmas without the Christmas story, really? There are a lot of settings of the Christmas story being set to music these days, especially in England. And this year, there was a bit of an embarrassment de riche. We had two choices. We had, first of all, Edward Nesbit's piece, Nativity, and also the one we're going to do today, Gabriel Jackson's, The Christmas Story. Both of them were released on Delphian. I've opted to go for the Gabriel Jackson work because it follows the Christmas story from Advent all the way up to Candlemas on February 2nd, which is when Jesus is presented at the temple. So I thought that was interesting, and I went for it that way. But I would encourage you to hear the recording of Edward Nesbit's work, Nativity. So I'll leave that there. So, Gabriel Jackson, The Christmas Story. Now, Gabriel Jackson is English. He was born in 1962 in Bermuda, which is pretty interesting. This also features the choir of Merton College, Oxford, the girl choristers of Merton College, Oxford, Owen Shan on the organ, François Cloete on organ, Oxford Contemporary Sinfonia, and Benjamin Nicholas is the conductor. This is on the Delphian label. This is a big production. The libretto is rooted in its relationship to Merton College. It uses the King James translation of the New Testament, which was partly done at Merton back in hundreds of years ago. And the libretto is also rooted in specially commissioned poems by two contemporary Merton poets, Penny Boxall and Marianne Clark. The four scenes of the piece reflect the four principal seasons and feasts within the Christmas cycle: Advent, Christmas, Epiphany, and Candlemas. Each section begins and ends with a liturgical text sung in Latin. Jackson says that the piece attempts in part to reimagine the sound world of the early Baroque, and the title of the piece even pays homage to Heinrich Schütz's Weihnachtshistorie. I have to say, I didn't really get a sense of the Baroque out of this, but because he said it, I can kind of see it in the structure. Tracks 1 through 4, Advent. Track 1, Conditor Alme Siderum. The trombone fanfares at the opening invoke John the Baptist's voice. It's richly recorded here, with very present sound, the tone entering the room. In fact, this is a really fantastically recorded performance. The choir then comes in with a prayer and some enticing chiming percussion. Let me see if I can get all three elements in. Yeah, as you can hear, this is going to be a serious and rather powerful work. Track 2, I Look From Afar, featuring Oscar Tovey Garcia, tenor, and Verity Sawbridge, soprano. The text is from Isaiah and will be familiar from the opening of Handel's Messiah. The track opens with an alto sax and bell percussion. We actually hear the alto sax quite a bit during this performance. Let's hear the opening. So we heard Oscar Tovey Garcia singing on that track. It's an unusual sound for a classical work and very appealing because of that. A section from Luke invoking John the Baptist prophesying Jesus' coming follows. A section from Luke invoking John the Baptist prophesying Jesus' coming follows, followed by a section of Luke depicting Elizabeth's meeting with Mary, and she's pregnant with John the Baptist, of course, so the narrative leaps around quite a bit. This track is worth sampling in its entirety for the interesting sounds coming from the orchestra. Track 3, Expecting, text by Penny Boxall for girls' choir and organ. I enjoyed the cloudy chords conjured by the organ, and the English girls' choir produces a characteristic English sound. They actually sound kind of like a boys' choir. I guess there's not much difference between them, except that boys' choirs have like a very kind of special tone to them. Anyway, let's hear the opening of this. I don't know, I guess girls and boys choirs both have that angelic quality to them. The verses go by with the organ filling in the space between. The ending line, I don't know what to come, except wondering about you, is touchingly portrayed. Track 4, Sit Christe Rex. The rather brief Advent section ends with another Advent office hymn. Low brass and violins, perhaps violas, present the opening sound here. There's a deeply satisfying ending brass note. Tracks 5 through 10 evoke Christmas. Track 5, Veni Redemptor Gentium. We hear a vibraphone present this Christmas hymn. Let's just hear that magical opening. Well, it is Christmas Day there, is it not? The choir and brass come in later with weightier, more sonically opaque material. Saxes and strings provide arabesques to end the section. Track 6, And It Came to Pass in Those Days. Deep, low brass accompanying the opening of the text, with high strings heard later. The text is practically chanted by the choir in unison. Again, I'm pretty intoxicated by the orchestration here. Track 7, Lullaby of the Beasts. Here the text is by Marianne Clark, born 1995. This has a pretty organ accompaniment. We hear the girls' choir sing the text. It's a catchy tune. I can hear this being taken up by choirs, in fact. The track takes a darker turn in the harmony on the line For All Who Know the Rider's Goad, which is the third verse. It ends brightly with the last Lulay. You should sample this in its entirety, and I will sample the other Marianne Clark poem on this album a little later. Track 8, And There Were in the Same Country. The same choir is heard here. Rustic strings represent the shepherds being narrated about in the text from the Gospel of Luke. The choir sings together so that all the words are audible. Once the angels appear in the first minute, the vibraphone comes in to represent their otherworldly presence. Okay, so what you heard there is the setting of the words glory to God, and we heard like a raucous alto sax in that section. Jackson paints the different levels of beings with wide differentiation in the orchestration. Track 9, O Magnum Mysterium. The vibraphone is a part of the accompaniment in this movement and provides a bit of magical timbre as the adult and girls choirs combine to sing the text. The ending Alleluia has a lovely, soothing sound to its harmonization and calm approach. Track 10, Toccata. This is an organ toccata. It's powerful, with pedal bass pinned to the floor as the keyboard figures celebrate with circling arabesques. It's a bit of a workout for the subwoofer, and a very satisfying one, and it's very brief at 1 minute and 10 seconds. Tracks 11 through 17, Epiphany. This feast occurs on January 6th, just after the 12 days of Christmas are over. Now, this was my favorite section of the piece because it features a lot of sort of Middle Eastern modes and sounds. Track 11, Tribus Miraculis Ornatum, has a lonely, eloquent, vibratoless cello, or maybe a viola, playing the opening theme. The harmony is modal, it stops, and the choir sings the first line in an appealing, scattered style. The choir comes together for the second line and continues in that style. Track 12, Now When Jesus Was Born in Bethlehem, featuring Oscar Tovey Garcia tenor and Edward Chesterman and Alexander Smith basses, and Harry Street alto. The alto sax is back for some Middle Eastern moods here, accompanied by percussion and modal harmony. We get the sense of the desert and the exotic cultures that travel there. Exotic to us, that is. At 1 minute and 38 seconds, a countertenor comes in, adding to the exoticism of the movement. He sings Herod's part. The choir comes in to finish the narrative. Track 13, Wie schön leuchtet der Morgenstern. A German work. In this 30-second movement, the choir is accompanied by chiming percussion, playing the melody along with the choir. The poem is from the Renaissance. Track 14, And the Third Day, There as a Marriage, featuring Olivia Earle, alto, Edward Chesterman, bass. A tambourine and syncopated staccato horn chords accompany the broken lines of the orchestra. There's a bit of desert exoticism in the music here, too. The brass gets a lot to do here, and they have some appealing effects. Jackson uses different sections of the orchestra for different lines, so the movement sounds unpredictable. I guess, as was the changing of the water to wine. Unpredictable. It's a movement that changes quickly. Track 15, A Guest at Cana. The poem here is by Penny Boxall. We heard a bit of her first poem in the Advent section. A rather eerie organ accompanies the choir here. It has a silvery descending line as the girls' choir sings the texts in block harmony, making the text easy to follow. The poem gives the impression that the wedding at Cana is historical yet happening today. The main focus of the text is the water turning to wine, though Jesus, Mary, or any of his apostles aren't named. I liked the descending line on a drop of deep red wine as if it descended from heaven. It's a pretty compelling section narratively. Track 16, And It Came to Pass in Those Days. Olivia Earle, alto, Oscar Tovey Garcia, tenor, Hugo Till, bass. This features rather rustic-sounding strings accompanying the choir. This section recounts Jesus' baptism. We hear the soloists after the first minute. I'm just going to sample the end of this track. Track 17, Benedicite Omnia Opera. More Middle Eastern sounds from the brass, the last time we'll hear them as this section is ending with this track. Braying saxophone plays with deep brass chords. Sounds like the cacophony of a marketplace. Tracks 18 through 26 are Candlemas, which is on February 2nd. And this is Jesus' presentation at the temple. Track 18, Lumen ad Revelationem Gentium. This section starts with a gentle flute melody, soothing to the ear. A sudden string chord introduces the harmonized choral line, gently accompanied by Wagnerian brass. On Et Gloriam, the dynamic becomes forte and we hear deep clanking chimes with the choir. Track 19, When the Days of Mary's Purification. We have a sudden character change to strings. The alto saxophone is up front and plays against the choir, practically chanting the text. The sax is the more audible instrument here. There are quickly changing elements in this section. Track 20, Nunc dimittis servum tuum. This Latin language chant features the words of Simeon in the temple when he witnesses Jesus. Gentle brass chords provide a bed for the chorus's male-only chant. It's a good contrast to hear low sounds here. Track 21, Joseph and his mother. Edward Chesterman is the bass soloist here. There's a familiar texture with the sax, brass, and viola accompanying the text. Edward Chesterman brings a lot of character to his solo. Track 22, Lumen ad Revelationem Gentium, a repeat of the text from track 18 with a similar approach. The same brass as the previous section accompany the women in the chorus here. Track 23, And There Was One Anna. Some more intriguing sounds from the brass here, using a lot of mutes to alter their timbres. The choir again sings this in a straightforward, linear manner. Track 24, Anna's Song. This has deep organ accompaniment for the girls' choir. Anna's words are provided here by Marianne Clark, so this is where we're going to sample her words, and the music set to them. We hear the alto sax there at the end. The text goes into Anna's thoughts and recounts her giving thanks for Jesus. In the text here, she receives the gift of the world, singing to her again in love. It's a nice text. Track 25, and when they had performed all things, string chords and a florid flute line set the stage for the choir's harmonized narration, which recounts Mary and Joseph returning to Nazareth with a brief sentence about Jesus' growth over the years. And finally, track 26, O Nata Lux de Lumine. Some odd harmony from the brass opens the track. After a pause, a shimmering accompanimental bedding has brass harmonizing in an uplifting way. The choir is part of the accompaniment here. Harmonized vocals finally rise above the orchestra and sing the text. The sax and other counter-melodic lines are more up front than the vocals. The organ comes in full blast to accompany the equally fortissimo choir for the final verse. Chiming bell percussion accompany, a sudden drop to piano follows, but then the fortissimo returns to bring us to the end, which is solemnly played by the orchestra. It's a genuinely uplifting ending for the piece. The overall impression the music in this piece gave me was a feeling of the mystery behind the birth of Jesus. It's an intriguing but not a relaxing listen, and maybe we need that. It's the kind of piece that would keep an audience attentive in the concert hall, wondering what sounds were going to come at them next. The recording is absolutely fantastic, with great clarity and presence achieved for all of the instruments as well as the soloists and choir. I particularly enjoyed the Epiphany section, with its Middle Eastern quality representing the wise men traveling through the desert. It was evocative in a way I hadn't thought of when imagining Epiphany before. All of the voices on the album are appealing. If you find this piece heavy-going in parts, fear not, the Christmas story guides us through, and the music ensures your attention is on the narrative. Those desiring a bit of musical weight for Christmas need look no further. There's lots of musical ballast here, providing our podcast recommendations with a center of gravity.
We often recommend that listeners break up a recording into separate listening sessions, and I'd strongly suggest that for this album to get the most out of it.
Yeah, I kind of do that with when I listen to Bach's Christmas Oratorio. I listen to it in its sections over 6 days. It might be a good idea to do that here, too.
Yeah. This is unique in a lot of ways. The sparse and unusual orchestration continually surprises with interesting saxophone and brass parts. The organ in track 10 sounds absolutely huge. It will just knock you right back to the wall in your room.
And I always love when that happens.
And if you follow the libretto, you'll get more of an appreciation for the unique phrasing of the lyrical material and the melodic direction of lines, which is really quite interesting. Jackson's different approaches to harmony throughout the work also kept my attention and drew my ear in. And other than also being a very clean and clear recording, it has really interesting and captivating spatial qualities in it. The instruments are actually pinpointed across the sound field, and they'll all come from individual locations if you're listening to it, which I found really charming as well.
That's right. I enjoyed that as well. Those sounds coming at us. It was really great.
Yeah, great recording. Over on the jazz Christmas menu, we're going to start out with Tree Jazz, The Shape of Christmas to Come on Palmetto Records. This came out way back in October on the 25th, and this is by Matt Wilson's Trio. That's TREE-O. Get it? Publicist Anne Braithwaite gave us a heads up to this way back in October, and I filed it away in the too early for me category because of my Christmas listening rule. But then I came back as the season got closer. So thanks to Anne for letting us know about this recording. Drummer Matt Wilson is originally from Knoxville, Illinois, now based out of New York. He's led or co-led dozens of recordings, and he's been a sideman on hundreds more for musicians such as Dewey Redman, Paul Bley, Lee Konitz, Cecil McBee, Danny Zeitlin, and Ron Miles, just to name a few. He's also had faculty positions at a number of music schools. This is the 15th anniversary of this group, Trio, which had their first concert in 2009 and recorded their first self-titled holiday recording back in 2010. They've taken the show on the road, and they have an annual event in New York that has featured guests such as Bill Frisell, Jason Moran, Joe Lovano, Kurt Elling, Aaron Deal, Christian McBride, and Esperanza Spalding. The basic group here is Matt Wilson on drums, Jeff Lederer on various reeds, and Paul Sikivi on bass. Now, we've heard a lot of cordless trios this year, so this will be a good fit for this year's vibe so far. In addition to the trio, we've also got the Treatum Singers, Mary LaRose, Audrey Wilson, and Gregory Rodriguez, and we've got a little piano on the last tune by Dawn Clement. As the title alludes to, The Shape of Jazz to Come was the third album by jazz musician Ornette Coleman, and we'll get a little bit of those free vibes on this album as well.
We sure will.
The recording's going to start out with I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day, inspired by the U.S. Civil War era poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. There have been a number of musical contributors and renditions to this since the 19th century, but in pop music, most notably, that would be by Johnny Marks back in 1956, and Bing Crosby recorded that song in October of 1956 using Marks's melody version and verses. It was released as a single and reached number 55 on the Music Vendor Survey. In this arrangement, Lederer has a descending little riff to make an intro on tenor sax, and Sikivi gets to take the melody on bass with the riff idea returning for backing lines. Let's hear this recording get going. Sikivi continues on with an improvised solo from there, and then Lederer follows. Let's hear a little bit of each of them as it goes on. And Lederer will be back with the melody in similar fashion, with Wilson keeping the chiming cymbals going like bells to the end. Track 2, we're going to jump into the fun category here with Do You Hear What I Hear? Under Pressure. And the publicity notes for this say, many folks get stressed out during the holiday season. So I decided to combine a Christmas classic with a classic by Queen and David Bowie from 1981. Now, Do You Hear What I Hear is a song written in 1962 with lyrics by Noel Regney and music by Gloria Shane. The song was originally recorded for Mercury Records by the Harry Simeon Chorale in 1962. As for Christmas and David Bowie references, there's a few. First of all, there's the movie Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence from 1983. And if you go to YouTube, you can see David Bowie with Bing Crosby singing Peace on Earth and Little Drummer Boy from 1977's Bing Crosby's Christmas Gems. Now, for this famous bass line that we're going to hear, Gen Xers might also hear in their head and rather like to forget Vanilla Ice's Ice Ice Baby from 1990 as well. Sorry I put that in your head. Lederer is on soprano sax for this one, and this melody, combined with the famous bass line, will make you smile. He gets into some fun pitch play on the improvisations and some modal fun and harmonic tensions. Let's come back in a little bit later when Wilson is really kicking the beat and the Treatum singers add their touches as well. Cute idea indeed. Track 3 is Mariah Parusha. And then I'd say it's another sonic concoction honoring pop diva Mariah Carey and the avant-garde saxophone legend Kalaparusha Maurice McIntyre. And you're wondering what that's going to sound like. McIntyre died back in 2013. Now, I never need to hear the original version of this 1994 Mariah Carey song again.
That's true with me too.
Since they torture me with it endlessly every year here in Japan. But this is a pretty cool reimagination of it with Lederer on flute. Let's hear it get started. Well, let's come back in a little later when he switches to tenor sax. Mariah has left the building. He stays on tenor, working to the ending with the rhythmic riff, and I'm starting to like this song more already. Track 4, Good King Wenceslas. This is dedicated to Wilson's friend and mentor, Jeff Hamilton, who also has a great swinging Christmas recording from a few years ago, Merry and Bright. We really like that one as well. Lederer switches to clarinet for this one, done in a playful, slow-motion style that gives Sikivi some space for bass answering lines. There's a sped-up phrase to keep you guessing, too. Let's check out the beginning. He has some fluid clarinet improvisations with bluesy touches and a great tone. On this one, let's check out Sikivi's bass solo. To the hesitant melody from there, with some fun fills from Wilson to finish it up. Track 5, Up on the Rooftop. This is a tune by Benjamin Russell Hamby. The notes say, "What can we say? We love Ornette Coleman." Well, it's going to sound different from the first recorded version by Gene Autry way back in 1953, that's for sure. Wilson gets some nice action between melody phrases from Lederer's tenor sax. I like the switches to minor here in the melody before it goes off in a free direction. Whoa, and there they go. Let's come back in for a little bit of Wilson's drum solo on this one. Back to the melody there with some playful riffy improvisations and a final sax squeal to finish it up. Track 6, Si Me Dan Pasteles, If You Give Me Pasteles. It's a Puerto Rican Christmas song that Jeff Lederer brought to the group. Pasteles are pastries shared by friends during the Christmas season. Wilson has some clicky fun on this one, and Lederer is back on clarinet for the tune. Let's check out the start. That clarinet sounds really nice. Let's come back in and hear a little bit more on the solo. Lots of fun there, and Wilson gets to play next, keeping the clicky ideas going with some bass booms and hi-hat mixed in. The Treatum singers join in toward the end with some vocals that continue under more clarinet from Lederer. Track 7 is Rocker. This is a contrafact by Jerry Mulligan on the Leroy Anderson classic Sleigh Ride. Sleigh Ride was first recorded by the Boston Pops Orchestra in 1949, and Jerry Mulligan recorded Rocker on his Tentet album in 1953. Some fast swinging fun here, and Lederer gives us some of the original melody before getting to Mulligan's tune on tenor sax. Let's hear it get going. Let's come back in for some more sax improvisation. Wilson follows from there with a drum solo, bringing it down soft before building it up on the snare and then working around the kit. They take another rip through the melody that builds to an exciting ending. Track 8, 8 Little Candles, is a Ladino Hanukkah song traditionally associated with the Sephardic Jewish community. Ocho Candelicas is the original title. This is written by the composer Florian Jagoda in 1983. A huge clarinet gliss gets this one going into a minor melody that will get you up dancing no matter what religion you follow. Let's listen to it. Now let's hear some of the clarinet improvisations and the fun speeding up of the tempo into some big shouts for the Little Candles. Boy, that tune sounds like a lot of fun to play. And the recording's going to end up with Shine Your Light. This is a new Christmas song by Jeff Lederer. The notes tell us it was inspired by a poem by Yoko Ono, Light Peace. Our hope is that it becomes a holiday anthem that inspires folks to offer kindness to our world. This one has a kind of R&B beat and some sexy sax from Lederer as a setting for what I guess is one of the Treatum singers reciting Ono's poem lines, and Don Clement on piano. Let's have a listen.
Carry an empty bag. Go to the top of the hill. Pour all the light you can in it. Go home when it's dark. Hang the bag in the middle of your room. In place of a light bulb.
Sakivig has a bass solo, and Lederer has a dirty sax solo that continues on over a refrain by the Treatum singers. Let's check out some of that as well. That continues on with bass dropping out until the last phrase and sax joining in on the vocal melody line for a softer ending. And that's the recording. It's a unique collection of holiday material and combining of ideas that turns into real jazz and is a lot of fun, especially Do You Hear What I Hear, Under Pressure, and Mariah Parusha are enjoyable oddities. The chordless format allows for lots of freedom, and Lederer gets pushes into some free territory on both saxes and clarinet. Sikivi has some bass solo spots, and of course the leader Matt Wilson has drum solos that are both technically solid and entertaining. The same old Christmas repertoire every year, year after year, can make you say bah humbug when the season approaches, but this recording will make you merry with its fresh ideas.
Yeah, I sort of think if you listen to the classical section of this podcast, this is a good match for a Joyfully. It's sort of the jazz offbeat sort of album that we listened to this year as far as Christmas music goes. Maybe you'd want to listen to one after the other. I thought the sax had this 50s and 60s early rock and roll vibe sound to it. I think it sounds more of like a R&B, sort of early rock and roll album than a jazz album to me. The recorded quality, too, reminds me of that era. This album, to me, was the sound equivalent of those tinted jazz album covers of the 1950s, the
Right.
visual. I felt like Jeff Lederer's sax style was more like you hear in early rock and roll songs with a lot of roulades, wailing at the top of his range. He has some really cool stylings, including a Rhapsody in Blue-esque glissando on the clarinet in 8 Little Candles. That was really cool. And in Sleigh Ride, you even heard the horse whinnying at one point. I think that horse was being ridden too hard. Anyway, I liked his constant switching between reed instruments. It gave the album a quality of surprise, as did the arrangements, really. I like the offbeat staccato take on Good King Wenceslas, probably my favorite track on this album. Overall, this had more of a raucous office Christmas party vibe to it than any kind of Christmas glow. Kind of the kind of thing where people are getting drunk and they're starting to take their clothes off, and you don't want that happening in the office.
Right.
It's a fun album, one to let your hair down to, I would say.
Well, Matt Wilson's album is a treat for jazz fans, but some of the free-blowing solos might not go down so well at the office party or at Grandma's house for the next few weeks. So here's one that will go down easily anywhere. I wanted to have at least one vocal recording. The twist is here, an escape from a White Christmas, really. Growing up in upstate New York, people always wished for White Christmas. The problem was that it usually lasted until Easter. So I say,
it's
why
true,
not
I
skip
remember
that and go more tropical with some balmy Brazilian sounds with Christmastime in Rio.
Yeah, I prefer a beach Christmas myself these days.
Well, White Christmas is on here anyway, but you won't get frostbite from listening to it. I used to have to scrape the ice from the inside of my windshield, which was a real drag. So Christmastime in Rio on Sunnyside, here from Romero, Lubambo, and Pamela Driggs. A husband and wife duo here, Mike.
Oh, well.
And they've been on a number of recordings together. Lubambo moved to the United States from Brazil in 1985. I first got turned on to him from Tom Harrell's recording, The Art of Rhythm, a really interesting Latin rhythm exploration recording back in 1998. He's performed and recorded with artists like Diane Reeves, Yo-Yo Ma, Diana Krall, Wynton Marsalis, Harry Belafonte, and many more. With more than 20 albums under his name, he's received a Latin Grammy and a nomination for a Grammy in the jazz category.
Yeah, and we heard him on this podcast before with Chico Pinheiro on the Two Brothers album.
That's right. Episode 114, Fabulous Frets. That was also on Sunnyside. Back in April of 2023, that recording came out. And Pamela Driggs is a Nevada native. Her interest in Brazilian music led her to move to Brazil to immerse herself in the music. And after returning to the U.S., she created the group Brasilia. The recording notes here say, quote, "We set out to create an album that radiates the warmth and gratitude we feel for our loved ones. This project is inspired by the classic holiday recordings we grew up with, but we wanted to give them a fresh Brazilian twist. The result is a collection of cozy and relaxing tunes that we hope bring joy to people for many holiday seasons to come." And if you want, you can see a duo performance of their Christmas performance on YouTube from about 3 years ago. So the lineup here is Romero Lubambo on guitar and percussion, Pamela Driggs vocals and background vocals, Luisa Lubambo on vocal for one track and background vocals and vocal arrangements, and she's their daughter, so that makes this a real family album. We've got Peter Martin on piano for 3 tracks, Victor Gonçalves on accordion on a few tracks, Joe Locke, vibraphonist, on 2 tracks, Itaiguara Brandao on bass, and Rafael Barata on drums. The recording's going to get going with Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, a Hugh Martin and Ralph Blaine tune, recorded first by Judy Garland with Georgie Stoll and his orchestra way back in 1944. There's a pretty original intro here for this with Lubambo's nylon string guitar and Gonçalves' accordion before Driggs is in with the lyrics. Let's take a listen.
Yourself a merry little Christmas. Let your heart be light. From now on, our troubles will be out of sight. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Make the Yuletide gay.
Let's come back and hear some of Lubambo's guitar solo.
And have yourself a merry little Christmas now.
The vocals are back from there, and the ending is gentle and wispy with accordion. Track 2, I'll Be Home for Christmas, Walter Kent and Kim Gannon. Of course, Bing Crosby recorded this first back in 1943. An 8-measure guitar and piano intro get this one going before the vocals and a medium-tempo bossa nova. Let's hear it get started.
And presents under the tree. Christmas Eve will find me where the love light gleams. I'll be home for Christmas, if only in my dreams.
Lubambo's off on a little solo there, and Peter Martin follows with a piano solo as well. This is the shortest tune on the recording, coming in at under 3 minutes. Track 3, Holiday of Love by Bill Driggs. The original was in 1958 by the King Sisters, with orchestra conducted by Alvino Rey, and I don't see that it's ever been recorded since then. So a neat choice. This builds up from a guitar and then accordion intro and gets a bass pulse from Brandao and some clicky beats from Barata under the vocals. It sounds like multiple guitar parts. Since you've probably never heard this tune, I'll play an extra long sample.
It's Christmas time. The snow is light and all around. There's joy inside. It fills the air with music bright. The holiday of love. The music swells and candles glow, and folks will greet the friends they know and sing a song of long ago. The holiday of love, the greatest gift to give you.
I like that lifting little modulation there. Accordion transitions to a guitar solo from Lubambo before the vocals are back. After another verse, Pamela and Luisa have some vocalizations together. Let's check out some of that into Gonçalves' accordion ending section. Track 4 is Christmas Love Song, a tune by Johnny Mandel and Alan and Marilyn Bergman. This was first recorded in 1991 by Blossom Deary and Mike Renzi. A nice guitar intro here too, and a pretty tune. Peter Martin is back on piano for this one. Let's check it out.
All I want for Christmas is you. You're the gift that's made my dreams all come true. All I need for Christmas is here, finding every sweet surprise wrapped up in your eyes.
Lubambo has a guitar solo on this one too, and it has a dreamy ending. Track 5. Is this the second or third time for Silent Night in this episode so far, Mike?
This is third. Yeah.
Franz Gruber, Joseph Moore again.
But this is the first time we're hearing it in English, I think.
Right.
Right.
Most people know the story of this tune, but I didn't know that the first recording goes all the way back to the opera singer Hans Hofmann in 1902, in German, of course. I think they have that on YouTube if you want to check it out. Luisa Lubambo gets to sing lead vocals on this one, and Romero has made an interesting intro. You might not know what it is until the vocal starts. Let's check it out. Breathy vocal quality. This one gets a surprising change midway through with some minor moods and vocalizations. Let's check out a little bit of that. And back to the familiar tune from there. Track 6, Presente de Natal, a song by Nelson Noronha. It was recorded in 1961 by João Gilberto. Joe Locke is in on vibes on this one. It has a nice bossa nova feel, and Driggs sings it in Portuguese. Let's hear it get started.
Papai Noel me deu bom presente de Natal. Você embrulhadinha num papel monumental. Papai Noel me deu bom presente de Natal. Você embrulhadinha num papel monumental.
And let's check out Locke's vibes solo on this tune. Mike, but I'm ready for a tropical drink already.
No, I've been ready for that whole episode.
Track 7, we're going to get a new original tune by Romero, Lubambo, and Pamela, Driggs, Winter Reverie. It's got lyrics filled with nice holiday imagery. It's in 6/8 time in a 32-measure AABA form. I'll give you a long sample so that you can hear both sections of the melody.
Fancy sugar plums and candy canes, the stockings hung with care. Love fills the air with song, old harmonies. There's laughter everywhere. Wrap the gifts and tie the bows above the door. Hang mistletoe, flurries of kisses, soft and light, the falling snow, a magic night. Let this be a time for all to share, friendship and love, gather those so dear, so close, and celebrate love this special time.
And back to the A section again. Locke has a nice solo on this one as well, with the vocals coming back from the B section. There's a pause to a coda ending with vocalizations and a slowdown. A very nice original tune. Track 8, The Christmas Song by Mel Torme and Robert Wells, first recorded by Nat King Cole in 1946. This is a duo performance, a very tasty solo opening from Lubambo on the guitar, and the sparseness is very nice for this tune. Let's take a listen.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire, Jack Frost nipping at your nose, Yuletide carols being sung by a choir, and folks dressed up like Eskimos. Everybody knows.
He gets some more push with a bossa nova rhythmic pattern on the B section and takes an improvised solo before a final vocal section to give it a pretty ending with some extra harmonic color. Track 9 is Santa Claus is Coming to Town by Haven Gillespie and J. Fred Coots, originally recorded by Harry Resser and his orchestra in 1934. Bass, drums, and accordion are back for this tune. They take it at a rather relaxed tempo, which works nicely with the more bossa feel they give the B section of the melody. Gonçalves and Lubambo both have solo spots. In the interest of time, I'll leave this one for you to check out on your own. Track 10, White Christmas by Irving Berlin. First sung by Bing Crosby, of course, first broadcast in 1941 and released on recording in 1942. This is a really great solo guitar opening. I'm going to sample from midway, though, so that you can hear some of Lubambo's improvised solo guitar track over the bossa rhythm guitar and light percussion that he's added. The vocals return with a modulation and backing vocals as well.
where the treetops glisten and children glisten to hear sleigh bells in the snow. I'm dreaming of a...
The ending section is nice too, with some more guitar and final vocal line. Do you think we'll have snow for Christmas, Mike?
Here in Kyoto? No, I don't think so.
Sometimes we do, but you never know.
Yeah, it doesn't seem very cold, although that can change overnight, as we know.
It sure can. Track 11, Jingle Bells, James Lord Pierpont, going back to 1857. On YouTube, you can hear the first recording by the Edison Male Quartet from 1898. Must be one of the earliest recordings. Originally titled and published as The One Horse Open Sleigh, it was renamed in 1859 by popular demand. Imagine that, getting your song title changed.
Yeah, not only that, this particular version of this song goes into like the second verse too, which we never hear, so I was kind of happy to hear that.
An interesting arrangement here with an intro that sounds like it has both nylon and steel string guitar parts. It gradually builds up a Brazilian rhythmic push as the lyrics come in with some extra harmonic colors at the end of the lines.
Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh. O'er the fields we go, laughing all the way. Bells on bobtail ring, making spirits bright. What fun it is to ride and sing a sleighing song tonight. Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. A day or two ago, I thought I'd take a ride, and soon...
There's that verse we usually don't hear, but you're going to have to listen to it yourself if you want to hear the rest of it. Peter Martin is back on piano for this one and gets a short, tasty solo. Before the final Jingle Bells vocal line, there's a unison guitar and vocalization section that's a neat touch. And the recording ends up with Toyland by Victor Herbert and Glenn McDonough from the operetta Babes in Toyland. The first recording was by Corinne Morgan with the Haydn Quartet in 1904. A delicious solo guitar intro into a super lazy waltz feel for the vocals. Gonsalves is back with accordion for this one. It picks up tempo from the second verse. Let's hear it get started.
Toyland, little girl and boyland, while you dwell within it, you are ever happy there. Childhood's joyland, mystic Mary.
The ending switches up from the waltz for some Brazilian rhythmic fun with accordion and vocalization. Let's check that out before we finish up with this recording.
Once you pass its borders, you can never return again.
Well, you'd have to be a Scrooge not to like this recording. There's attractive arrangements with variety from just a voice and guitar duet to bass and drums, giving a Brazilian rhythmic push sometimes. Victor Gonçalves' accordion adds a lot of charm, and Peter Martin's piano on 3 tracks adds more variety. Lubambo's guitar constantly grabs your ear with tasteful playing and inventive solo ideas and little surprises in the arrangements. Pamela Driggs has a warm and relaxing voice that works perfectly for the Brazilian feel injected into most of the tunes, and we get one in Portuguese as well. And daughter Luisa's backing vocals add atmosphere, and she gets her own atmospheric feature on Silent Night. Put this on and mix up some tropical drinks, and you'll have a toasty Christmas holiday.
Yeah, this felt really good. And again, it sort of matches with the Benjamin Appl album. So if you want to go classical jazz, you can maybe pair those two. I think they'd work really well. They're both kind of relaxing, but this one left me all chilled out. All the snow has melted after hearing this. In fact, you might be able to put your speakers outside and it might melt the snow for you. For me, this changes what Christmas music feels like, and it's an appealing change. I, for one, was relieved to hear a non-peppy version of Jingle Bells. We heard actually 2 pretty good versions of that, and we're going to hear another one soon, actually. The bossa nova vibe is well done here. Driggs even sings the extra verses that we rarely hear in Jingle Bells, and her vocals are up front, clearly enunciated all the way through, and she sings these songs in a very straightforward manner. The guitar is the main focus of attention, as Lubambo's playing is always so appealing and soothing in that Brazilian style. And there are other instrumentalists, of which I enjoyed the accordion contributions of the most. It's an appealing sound, but I do have one complaint. It's bad enough for jazz tracks to fade out, but on this album, the last track faded out, Toyland, right? You can't leave us, fading out on the last track. I don't know. I just thought that was too much. I also want to say about Toyland, it's a song I just never really liked. I always kind of find it kind of schmaltzy and nostalgic, but I really liked this version of it here. And I thought this version brought out like a similarity with Leonard Bernstein somewhere from West Side Story, and it kind of surprised me. I had never thought of that before, and this performance made me think of that. So overall, this is a great album to have while sitting beside the fire, or maybe on the beach with your tropical drink. Relaxing after all the Christmas preparations are done, it sets a great relaxed tone.
And we've got one more for you, a piano trio recording, Swinging Christmas.
All right, it's about time. My Christmases have to swing.
It's on the JazzJazz label. Came out November 29th. I was really happy when I saw this by Martin Sasse. Sasse has released around a dozen albums as a leader. His piano trio has been one of his main groups for almost 30 years. Their first album was Here We Come back in 2000. Guests on later albums included saxophonists Vincent Herring, Steve Grossman, and Charlie Mariano, as well as guitarist Peter Bernstein. Sasse is taught at the Institute of Media and Music at the Robert Schumann University of Applied Sciences in Dusseldorf. He caught our ear back in episode 90, which was called Mostly Made in Germany, back in November of 2022 on Matthias Strucken's I Love You Porgy album on the JazzJazz label as well. And that had me wanting to hear something from Sasse, and we heard his trio in episode 140, Beyond Infinite, in November of 2023. And that was Martin Sasse's trio recording Longing. And we've got the same lineup of musicians here. The Bandcamp blurb about the album says, "Oh, what hasn't been done to good old Christmas music? Year after year, it serves as an acoustic mood lifter, decorates sentimental commercials, and is used as a trivial soundtrack at Christmas markets without the original beauty of Christmas melodies still being perceived." Now, however, there is the ultimate musical rebuttal. The Martin Sasse Trio passionately dedicates itself to both American Christmas songs and the German heritage of Christmas folk and church songs. The result is simply overwhelming, a sound experience that will have an effect far beyond the Christmas season. That's a big build-up. Is it going to deliver? Well, every year we're looking for at least one swinging Christmas album, and that's advertised right in the title. So let's jump into what we've got. Martin Sasse on piano, and the arrangements here. He's got a little assistance on one tune I'll mention later. Martin Jaganowski, bass. He's from Macedonia, living in Germany. Joost van Schaik on drums from the Netherlands. Olaf Weldon plays recorder on the last track. recorded and mixed by Taemin Kobialka at Topaz Studios Cologne, mastered by Thomas Olscher at Railroad Tracks Studios Kirpen. And we're going to get underway with Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Haven Gillespie and J. Fred Coots, 1934, Harry Resser and his orchestra, I mentioned before, the first recording of this tune. Sasse swings the melody over light brush drumming from Van Schaik, and Jagonovsky's playing half-note bass lines, giving it a relaxed feel. Let's hear the melody. Let's jump back in for some of the improvised piano solo with little bluesy flourishes and a switch up to walking bass. And back to the melody from there, a short but swinging start to the recording.
Yeah, and he even gets extra points from me for playing the introduction to this song, which is rarely heard. Songs from the early 20th century often had an introduction because of the theater,
Right.
like to lead into the song. And most people who sing this song or play it usually just go right into the Santa Claus is Coming to Town melody, but he does the intro. And I thought that was great. I like hearing that.
You don't get to hear that all the time. Track 2, Angel auf den Feldern singen, which translates to Angels Sing in the Fields. I never thought of it that way because in English, we think of it as angels we have heard on high, right? This is a carol of singers from the Christmas tradition of German-speaking Switzerland. And around 1939, it seems a new version of the text was created in Germany as a Christmas carol. Sasse gives it a rhythmic alternating chord opening with a pedal tone that the bass doubles up on. It's a nice effect with painting on the drums from Van Schaik's brushes. Let's hear it. A nice touch on the piano solo on this one with lines in the upper register and a little chordal interlude before continuing on with improvisations. I like the unhurried, somewhat delicate treatment of this tune. Track 3, White Christmas, Irving Berlin. We heard this on the previous album, but we have to check out this swinging version that gets started with a bouncy piano intro. Great little break into the start of the solo there, and I love those left-hand bass note stabs. Sasse's trades with Van Schaik are a lot of fun on this tune, so let's check out some of those. Ooh, that was a nice upward run there. After another round of the melody, there was more high-energy fun with some final piano ideas to a great ending. Track 4, Christmastime, is here, a favorite of Mike's and mine as well, Vince Guaraldi, from A Charlie Brown Christmas 1965, a song we grew up with, and maybe a song that was the first jazz a lot of kids heard while watching Charlie Brown every year.
And that's probably why we're hearing it so often now, because those children have grown up and some of them have become jazz musicians, and now they play it.
It's simply a gorgeous melody, and Sasse gives a tasteful nod to Guaraldi with his phrasing. Let's just hear it get going. Nice ringing bass solo by Jagonovsky there, and a fine improvised piano solo on this one too. Track 5, Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, Hugh Martin and Ralph Blaine.
Is this the third time we're hearing this one too?
Yeah, I think this is the third time, maybe. This is done as a slow ballad. Sasse's relaxed phrasing is charming, as is his coloring of the harmony. He rolls up some tremolos and decorations on the melody too, a playful touch on the solo with some Ellington-esque flourishes. Jakunovsky has a melodic bass solo that really sings out too. We've heard this tune on the previous recordings, so in the interest of time, I'll leave you to check it out on your own. Track 6, O Tannenbaum, O Christmas Tree, a rubato solo piano start with some nicely voiced and colored chords. Let's hear that into a bluesy chugging melody. This one has a really playful piano solo that has a great mix of ideas, so I want to hear just a little bit more of that. Bass and drums get to trade after that there. Before a final melody exposition, be sure to check that out too. Track 7, Es ist ein Ross entsprungen. This one has some additional arranging by Guido Kaiser. Of course, in English we know this as Lo how a Rose erblühming, but it is of German origin, first appearing in print in 1599 in Cologne.
And we also heard it on the Benjamin Appl album earlier in the podcast.
This has a contemplative start with just piano and bass. The melody moves in sync with the chords, drums joining in lightly later on. It does gradually take on a determined movement with Jakunovsky's bass pulses. I'll leave you to check this one out on your own. Track 8, Frosty the Snowman, Walter Rollins and Steve Nelson, first recorded by Gene Autry and the Cass Country Boys in 1950. This one is swinging with some snaps, so we better check it out. And let's check out Jagonovsky really digging into the bass solo on this one. Back to the melody from there. The ending has a little harmonic diversion. Track 9, Zu Bethlehem geboren, born in Bethlehem. I was curious about the history of this tune. It's a German Christmas carol. The text is attributed to Frederick Spee. It was first printed in Cologne in 1637, but they didn't know about the author of it until the 20th century, when there was some research on the style and content that made that decision of who it should be attributed to. It was printed with a popular secular melody in 1638. But how about a modal 6/8 jazz version? This is really cool. The solos here follow a blues progression a la all blues, and we really need to hear some of that as well. We even get a little Coltrane sprinkle on the Christmas cookie there too. Supremely done. Van Schaik gets to work up the drums, going around the pattern before they get back to the melody and a quiet ending. Maybe my favorite reimagination on this recording. Track 10 is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Johnny Marks, first sung by Gene Autry and the Pinafores in 1949. Van Schaik starts it out on the drums and keeps the tom rhythm going for a unique beat through the tune. It's playful and fun, and Sasse's solo matches the mood. It's short, coming in under 3 minutes. I'll leave you to check this one out for yourself. Track 11, Heiligste Nacht, Holiest Night, a German Catholic church song with a text that goes back to 1783. The attribution of the melody composition seems to have a real complicated history. They give it a reverential, even waltzing treatment here with pleasing harmonies. Let's hear it get started. Sasse's solo on this has a delicate touch in the upper register that's charming. Track 12, Ihr Kinderlein kommet, Little Children Come, a German Christmas carol. The lyrics were written by Catholic priest and writer Christoph von Schmidt in 1798. Well, this really swings and bounces. Let's check it out. Wernschek gets to fill in the final melody section gaps on the drums here, and it's the shortest tune on the recording at 2 minutes and 37 seconds. Track 13, Frank Loes's What Are You Doing New Year's Eve? First recording goes back to 1947. Kay Kaiser and his orchestra, echoes of O Tannenbaum on the intro here. When the familiar melody comes along, it's relaxed with nice chord voicings from Sasse. At this tempo, the melody takes up about half of the tune, but let's come back and hear some of Jagonovsky's bass solo on this one. Nice bluesy touches on the B section there when Sasse returns. I might still be listening to this recording on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, me too.
And the recording wraps up with Leroy Anderson's Sleigh Ride. We've kind of heard it 1.5 times already with contrafact based on it. This one really swings, and Olaf Weldon adds a fun final touch to the recording on recorder, so let's take a listen. Sasse has a solo as well, and Weldon is back for the final melody section to wrap up the recording. A swinging Christmas for sure, but there's more than that under the surface. Reverential reimaginations of German Christmas carols, fun Christmas pop favorites, and even a modal blues excursion. Sasse shows technique and class throughout with entertaining improvisations that give you tastes of the jazz piano tradition from swing to modern ideas. Tchaikovsky's bass is fat and steady, accompanying and melodic and ringing in solos, and Von Schake's drumming is spot on with a variety of beats and textures. This is one I think I'm going to be coming back to every year at Christmas time.
Yeah, me too. I think I could take my Santa Claus hat off after hearing this one, because now this put me in the Christmas spirit. It's swinging, and I like that a lot. Now, a lot of the songs in this album have worn me out over the years, and but Martin Sasse liked the note that you read at the beginning, and his trio bring appealing life to them again. Santa Claus is Coming to Town is a good example. It sounds fresh in this swing arrangement, as does Sleigh Ride at the very end there, with its more upbeat than usual swing feel, and its rather cheerful recorder playing the theme. There's variety throughout the album. Sasse spacing his chords for overtone richness and What Are You Doing New Year's Eve, and dressing up some Renaissance-era tunes with modern jazz harmony and rhythm. Sasse's trio bring the high-spirited swing. It's an ideal listen for the Christmas season as far as I'm concerned. And like you said, it'll be on my playlist for years to come, too.
Yeah, and that's about it for our Christmas episode here. We want to wish everyone Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.
Yeah, from me, too.
Not Happy New Year yet, because we haven't got to our best of episode yet.
Yeah, we'll do that in the best of episode, of course.
But you can check out these recordings for the next couple weeks. But we're going to have some new recordings next week, and kind of an organ-focused episode, Mike.
It is, and I'll say why in just a moment. I'm starting out with actually a Renaissance choral work from Hyperion called A Monk's Life, and it's by the Brabant Ensemble, Stephen Rice conductor. It organizes its works through like the life of a monk, starting with him entering the monastic life and entering with him dying at the end. And being received into heaven, of course, because he's a Catholic monk. Then we have Bach Organ Works, Volume 6 from Masaaki Suzuki. This series has been going on for some time now, and this is just the latest installment of that. He's doing the Leipziger chorales on this one. And the reason this whole organ thing started, well, also because Russ had a lot of great jazz organ albums, but was the release of Yves Castanet's Magnificat, which was written in response to the fire at Notre Dame. Now, tonight, we're recording on December 8th, and Notre Dame Cathedral has reopened. The first Mass is on December 8th out in Paris, and there are a lot of works, I guess, that we're going to hear there. This one's going to be premiered there, I think, next autumn. In the meantime, though, they're playing the Magnificat by Johann Sebastian Bach, so you can check that out, too. Yeah, so this is the new work to celebrate that and that magnificent organ in Notre Dame Cathedral.
Excellent. On the jazz half, we're going to hear a recording that I mentioned last week when we heard keyboardist Ben Patterson's latest piano trio recording. He's also on the organ on a new recording by guitarist Jim Mullen that's called For Heaven's Sake on Stunt Records. And that's got saxophonist Jan Harbeck, a musician we like a lot as well. So I'm going to check that out. We're going to go over to Italy for Giulio Campagnolo and the Jazz Funkers with a recording called Come On. And that's got a lot of funky tunes on it.
The Jazz Funkers,
It's going to be a lot of fun, yeah. And we're going to finish up with an organist who we really like, Brian Charette, and his newest release on Cellar Music, You Don't Know Jack. And who's Jack? Well, you got to listen next week to find out and get some of your jazz organ history.
Sounds great.
That'll all be coming up in episode 193. I'll have a playlist up on Deezer with a link to it on our Facebook page a few hours after this episode is published if you want to listen along with us during the week. That's going to wrap things up for episode 192, the Christmas 2024 episode. As always, we want to say thanks to Fast Signs of Staten Island for our glowing neon logo. Any final holiday wishes for the audience, Mike?
Well, I just want to recommend one more jazz Christmas album that came out this year, Donald Vega's All Is Merry and Bright, which I really enjoyed. It's a piano trio. It's kind of on the mellow side, a mellow one, but I thought it had a good vibe to it, so I'll throw that one out there if people want to listen to that too.
Yeah, if you need more shoot me an email. I've got a long list of them. And I'm about Christmas out by now, but if you want more music, I can definitely recommend it. Anyway, we'll be back with some organ-centered music next week. So until then, keep listening, and we'll see you again next time.